Welcome to Charting New Paths in Pre-K to 12 Education, a podcast by Solution Tree. In our authors segment, we invite our new and best-selling authors published by Solution Tree to share their expertise and valuable insights with you. Listen to this segment and add another tool in your toolbox of research-affirmed, classroom-ready strategies to improve student outcomes. I'm your host, Prisma Lopez-Marine. Enjoy today's episode. Hello everyone, in today's episode, the book we'll be talking about is titled Parentships in a PLC at Work, Forming and Sustaining School-Home Relationships with Families. This book provides PLCs with a resource for connecting to parents and building effective, sustainable parentships. This book provides the guidance necessary to build a parentship success team, PST, and implement a system to benefit educators, students, and parents. We are joined by the author of this book, Kyle Palmer. He is an award-winning former principal of Lois and Clark Elementary in Liberty, Missouri. He firmly believes in identifying and encouraging future leaders to help grow the capacity of the learning organization. Under his leadership, Lois and Clark Elementary was designated as a Model PLC at Work school by Solution Tree. He also implemented the International Center for Leadership in Education Model School in 2015, 2016, and 2017. He is currently the Executive Director of Human Resources in the Center School District in Missouri. Kyle, thank you for joining me for this episode.
Well, hello, Prisma, and thank you so much for the invitation today to be on your wonderful podcast. It is an honor, and I'm very, very excited.
All right. We are excited to have you here with us because, as I mentioned before, not only are we going to talk about your book, but we are also going to talk about your experience as a leader who was part of the Model PLC school process. So this is kind of a double situation here that we have, which is exciting. So before we get into all of that, can you share with us about your current role in education?
Absolutely. So for the last 5 years, I've been the Executive Director of Human Resources in the Center School District here in Kansas City. Now that's on the Missouri side, not on the Kansas side. But it's a wonderful district. It's a smaller district, so I'm able here to do the HR leadership role as well as do a lot of our district leadership around the work of being a professional learning community, do some coaching within the district, be a part of that that team that provides a lot of the PD to our admin team, our leadership team, and to our teachers. So it's been a great role for me.
That's a lot. Plus, you're writing books. That's on top of everything that you're just
all my free time. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us more about just the time, going a little backwards here, that you served as a principal at Lois and Clark Elementary, where the school was designated a Model PLC at Work school with us. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I was a fourth grade teacher up by Des Moines, Iowa, in a district, Ankeny Community School District, and I was getting my master's at Drake University, and we had a class on school leadership, and they broke out this VHS video cassette, the put it into the VCR, and all these things that our kids have no idea what they even are anymore, and it was one of the beginning videos that Rick DuFour had done talking about PLC. So that was probably in 2002 or 2003. And even at that time, I listened to Rick and I'm just like, this all makes perfect sense. This would be a great way to lead a school. So when I was given the opportunity in 2007 to move from Iowa down to the Liberty, Missouri area to be principal at Lewis and Clark, I said that was going to be what we were going to do at our school. And when I got there in 2007, it was already a great school and great people and great kids and great families. But we started implementing the PLC work. Missouri was doing a lot of work at that time around PLC, and we were able to get it going. And just like all the research shows, we did it and we got the results and it was a phenomenal, fun 10 years as principal at Lewis and Clark, and I got to bring three of my kids there, and I'll talk more about that later. But it was just a great experience, great staff. I was in love with that place, and it was an awesome 10 years.
So, looking back at that, at your first encounter with Solution Tree Resources, was that your first encounter? And what helped you the most as a leader in education as a principal?
Sure. That was my first encounter with PLC with Solution Tree. Would have been the video that we watched with Rick, um, and then we did some of the work when Missouri when I got there, and it was just really the idea. It was really the framework. I'm a systems guy. That's how I think, and looking at this PLC work, it was just like this is such a great way to set up structures inside of the building. It was a great way to provide clarity to everyone. I'm a very people-centered person, so I love the aspect that it really was driven by autonomy of the teachers and the teacher teams. And from my coaching days, because I was still a coach up until that time, I understood teamwork and collaboration and needing results and setting goals. So it was like this perfect parallel from my world to the world of becoming a principal, and because it was so research based and was proven to be effective, I just instantly gravitated towards the work. And within a couple of years of becoming a principal, I was able to go to one of the institutes, and the only thing better than Rick on a video was Rick live in person. And I went to the St. Charles Institute and just was madly writing down notes and buying books and trying to put those things in place with our guiding coalition back at the building. And I think since that time, I've been to like 8 or 9 institutes or summits or whatever it may be, and I just can't get enough of the learning. And that's really what got me going. And then from there, it was diving into more of the books and diving into learning by doing and diving into just the numerous great resources that you can find that all the great authors provide.
So, what was the process like trying to implement the school to become a model PLC?
Yeah, so it just like it was important to get our leadership team in place, and they already had a leadership team in place. It was maybe a little more focused on a lot of committees and activities and different things. So we one of the first things we did was do a book study on the 10-year anniversary book around PLCs and developing PLCs in your school. That, along with the training that we were getting from the state of Missouri, our leadership team was able to start putting some of those things in place. At that time, I had a third grade team that was just going crazy with the work, and they were really the ones who drove a lot of that work. And one of the best things I ever did was I asked some of the best PD I ever did was asking that third grade team to do PD for the rest of the teachers. So they started talking. They did a half day PD workshop with our staff, and we're talking about their standards and unwrapping their standards and building assessments and how they were getting their intervention groups off of those assessments, and that work just started spreading from there. And we needed to, there was definitely a period of time where we had to get everybody on board with the work, and not everybody was, and I would say really in year 4 it just took off. And the teams were always very collaborative. That's even when I started, the teams met a lot, and maybe we worked a little bit more on the right work or the clarity of the work that really gets results. But the teams were already very collaborative, and I walked into an environment where teachers really were interdependent already. So that was, looking back on it, I didn't realize how lucky I was that teams were already, to that point of wanting to collaborate.
Oh, that's so good. That's
Yeah.
such a reflection to see what all you've implemented and you continue to do. Just like you're still going nonstop here.
Yeah, and
So,
I just try to build up our teams and build up our teachers. And I think, my view of leadership is to be a leader of leaders. And knowing we had a lot of talented people and a lot of great teachers and a lot of great staff in our building was just trying to set them up for success the best I could.
and you did that. Absolutely.
We did, yeah, we did. We were very proud of that.
So your book actually dives into the terminology, going into your book now, parentship, which was, I was trying, as I was describing it earlier, I kept trying to say partnership, but it's just parentship. So can you describe how this term began and its purpose regarding education?
I think I may have just done that one day too, where I was just thinking about it. And I just said parentship. I don't think I can remember the specific moment that came about, but it was a play on partnership. It was maybe a creative way to truly bring a little bit more meaning to the whole idea of the need to connect with parents in your parent community. So there was maybe a little thought behind that, but I thought about the term. I fell in love with it. It really kind of set the tone for the whole project. And I didn't know if Solution Tree would like it or not. So I went with it. And when I started that process of getting feedback and all that, they seemed to really like it, and it kind of just stuck from there. So it just kind of brought a lot of clarity to the work and a lot of definition to the work that I was doing, and just kind of took off from there.
And it does, like a lot of the book does describe its emphasis and significance of it. So I do like that. I appreciate that about the book. And then also you mentioned another thing I really do appreciate is that you mentioned your own experience as an educator and as a parent. Share with us why you took such a relatable approach.
It was yeah. I was able to have. We have 4 children, and our oldest when I've within a few years of me starting at Lewis and Clark, Carson started, and then Claire started, and those are our older 2. And then as I was kind of wrapping up my time at Lewis and Clark, I think it was the year that Claire left and went to 6th grade. That was the year I left, and our Cal was in at that time 1st grade, and he was probably the saddest of everybody that I had decided to leave at that time. And then what's really cool about it is our youngest, our 4th, Kaufman, is a kindergartner now there this year. So and just there's so many parallels around that question that you asked. So yes, it was my role as an educator. And, when you say that question, what would you want, what kind of experience do you want your kid to have? That really has a lot of meaning for me, because I had the opportunity to help define what that experience is going to be like for our kids and my own kids. So I also thought that if this was, going to be good enough for my kids, it should be good enough for everybody's kids. So I took a very personal approach to the work that we were doing at Lewis and Clark, because with my kids being there, then I got to know a lot of families through all the different activities and sports and what my kids were doing. And it just helped build a great relationship between myself and our families and our staff. And that just always, like I said, I want to be a people person and lead people first, and people over programs and all that. So I always try to be centered in that way. But I saw as a teacher, I saw it was at times hard to connect with parents, and then as a principal, I saw that especially some of our newer teachers would have a hard time connecting with some of our parents, or they would get afraid to call them or afraid to communicate with them, or whatever the reason for the tension was. And then in my new role as an HR director, where we're hiring new teachers and bringing new teachers on board, it just really stunned me that one of their biggest apprehensions as a new teacher, with all this stuff going on with new curriculum and new lessons and a new school and maybe a new state or a new city, one of their biggest stressors was connecting with parents. So I just, I kept seeing this everywhere I went, and I said, what should do a kind of a project on this. So really the project started with the idea that if teachers could just understand better the role in the life of a parent, that they would maybe have a little more empathy on how hard it is to be a parent. And then I thought, if parents could just understand the kind of the life and the role of being a teacher, and the struggles and how much goes into their profession and how hard they work, then maybe parents would understand a little bit better. So how can we kind of build this bridge between the two. And then it became Parentships, and I started writing the book when COVID hit. It's kind of one of those things I wanted to do for a little bit, and then when COVID hit, I didn't have the excuse about time anymore, because we were basically shut in our houses for the first few months. So I started writing a lot of that at that time, and then just kept working on it the last couple of years, and now we're here with Parentships and a PLC being released a couple months ago.
I love how passionate scholars and educators, both pre-K through 12 and higher ed, are so passionate about education that during the pandemic, what they did on their time was write a book. Because you were not the first one. There's other authors I've talked to, and I'm like, wow, that's just, you show the reflection of your passion for education. And that's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely.
So, as a passionate believer of PLCs and the power that they encompass for educators, why is it important to also establish a collaborative bridge with parents, as you mentioned?
It really is driven by the idea that parents can be a great resource in our schools as well. And a lot of the work that we had done in our PLC was really the work between teachers and staff to do the most they could for our kids, but we weren't really tying into the whole parent resource that we had. And as a principal, as I look back on my time at Lewis and Clark, we had a phenomenal parents. They would very supportive. They would donate and bring stuff for parent teacher conferences. Our school would be buzzing and full when we had a music concert or an art festival. Back to school night, you could hardly even find a place to park. Around our school, it was parent support was great. Parent involvement was great. But the more I looked into this work and did this work, the more I realized parent engagement is really something different. Parent engagement is really not just the parents having a voice, but giving the parents a voice in the work that you're doing as a school, and making them more of a intentional partner with you was really, as I look back on it, something I probably could have done better as a parent. But if you think about students and staff, and now you bring parents into it, you really have what I call the education triangle. And with parents, they're our kids' first teachers. From the moment they're born till the moment they come to school, they're the ones teaching their kids. They obviously they love their kids. They love them. They sometimes that means that the claws come out a little bit. But again, if we understand kind of where parents are coming from, we tend to understand that just a little bit more. And our parents know our kids the best. So let's talk with our parents. Let's get to know our kids better. Let's use our parents to build those relationships inside of our walls of our school. And then it just kind of really got into, let's make parents a part of our PLC process. How can we purposely collaborate with them? How can we measure the effectiveness and the results that we're getting from driving parent engagement? What do our parents need to know? What do they need to be able to do? And really, by focusing that through the PLC process, I think they also learn more about what we're trying to do as a school community, and it gets everyone more on the same page. And especially now, I could never have imagined when we went into the pandemic where our state of affairs would be 2 years later. And I think the book's coming out at a great time. I think, a lot of mitigation strategies the last couple of years were to, hold visitors out of our buildings, and parents, you can't come in, and we're going to hold virtual conferences. And it was all done for the safety of everyone with COVID-19. And I'm not saying anything against that, but as an unintended consequence of that is our parents were basically shut out for the last couple of years. So we get a lot of, parents enragement now. Instead of parent engagement, there's a lot of parent enragement. And I've got to credit that to Eric Francis. He coined that term for me, but I told him I'd give him credit for that. But he's right. The parents community and our school community are just not on the same page right now, generally speaking, and kind of going in divergent directions. And it's kind of on us to lead to getting back on the same page.
And that makes a lot of sense, just because I've heard some educators say that coming out of the pandemic, we are no longer in the same type of education system. It is no longer the same, and we can't go
That's
back
correct.
to it. So moving forward, if we're kind of starting from a clean slate, kind of the pandemic gave everybody, all entities, or all sectors, education and everybody else, business, everything, kind of like a restart button almost, if you want to take that approach. But for education, it just seems that that if you're able to kind of welcome that as a new possibility, as an opportunity to start over, then you were absolutely right. This book could not have come at a better time to incorporate, to kind of ignite that light for parents. We are not the same school that we are before. We probably won't go back to that because we've seen things that weren't working. Let's start over together. And that's just kind of like a better impact. So one of the things that kind of what you were saying earlier about teachers kind of having that one thing that they're most concerned about. Why do you think that having a relationship or establishing a relationship with parents is kind of one of their main concerns?
I think it's just important to be on the same page, and the to really have that connection to home, because we get kids for 7 hours a day at school, and educators are going to do all they can possibly do to help support our kids for those 7 hours a day. But there's a lot of other hours in the day where if we can really help build the skills in our parents and kind of understand what it is that we're trying to do at school. How can we communicate our essential standards? How can we communicate, maybe what standard are they struggling on? What we're trying to do to help our students in the classroom? How can we help at home? A lot of parents just don't know how. They want to help, they just don't know how to help. So the more we can kind of build those skills in our parents, the more they'll be able to support our kids. And you saw it, what we saw in the last couple of years, what we thought we would never ever see. Our kids looking through computer screens at home, with a lot of parents who were uncomfortable and didn't know how to support in any way. And that's a helpless feeling. I'm lucky my wife and I are both administrators. My wife is a building principal. I was a principal for 10 years. I'm in HR now. There are times that we don't know what to do with our kids and kind of where they're at with some of their experiences. So there's just a lot of parents out there who really need our help and support. And the more we can do that, the more we have a phenomenal resource right there to help our students, because everyone's goal should be for the success of our students. The parents, the teachers, and the kids themselves should have those goals for success for themselves. So I think, again, getting everybody back on the same page, and I don't want to get political in any way, but there's just a lot of stuff out there right now that if we could just kind of clear out of all that stuff, and let's just get together, let's talk about what your concerns are, let's be transparent, let's address it. Because the more you're worried about that tension or those problems, to address something, the worse it gets, and that's not solving anything.
Right. The ultimate purpose for any interaction between parents and teachers is a student. Student is the primary concern here, the primary purpose of talking to each other in the first place. So that should definitely be firsthand the attention.
Absolutely.
So then the book has a captivating authority of this concept with both the analysis of parentship in PLCs and implementing strategies. How can this book start these conversations between parents and educators?
Well, I think it starts with what you had mentioned, the PST earlier. That's the Parentship Success Team. So as a guiding coalition part of your building, let's build a team where it has parents on it and it has educators from your building on it. Now that could look like a more developed PTO or PTA, because a lot of the PTAs I've ever been a part of is you go to a monthly meeting, you share out some information, and that's really all that you do. But there's parents can be such more of a resource, again, with ideas, with feedback, with thoughts. It's their school too. And I do firmly believe that it's the parent school too. And obviously we're professionals, and there are the roles that the educators take in leading that work, but there's also a role, and a bigger role, for parents there to help support the vision and mission of your building as well. So I think by establishing a parentship success team, you're developing right away that you're establishing right away that we want parents more than just for your donations and money and things that you can, fundraise or whatever. We want your minds, we want your ideas, we want your creativity, we want you to be a bigger part of our school. And I think from the very beginning with that PST, you're clearly communicating that this is going to be different. This is going to be much more of an intentional process to get our parents engaged in your school.
In those meetings or in those teams, would they then share books like such as yours, the one that we're talking about, to then actually have not just a book reading, but also incorporating scenarios or learning from the strategies that you talk about in your book? That's a good. Would you say that that's like a good opportunity to do that?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great place to start. And the book kind of goes through how to build a mission and a vision and commitments of your PST, and you want to be able to clearly define what the purpose of your parentship success team is. And with all that work and doing that work together, just like with our collaborative teams, the more you do that work together, the more you're going to build the skills within that team to be able to work at a very deep level together. So that's kind of why you want to develop that mission and vision and the purpose and where you want to see the building go. And it's a mirror of the work we already do in our schools, but it's a mirror to doing that work with your parent group.
One of the other things about this book that is very kind of impactful is that it has real life scenarios, one of which I saw that of a hardships that teachers go through because there might be not enough involvement or too much involvement from a parent or lack of support from their building administration. Which strategy from the book would you recommend the teachers start with?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of great strategies in there to be able to start with, but that's you brought up another good example. Is sometimes our parents are too involved. I mean, they're almost too much, and I think until you address what the real expectations of parents are, it really confuses that. So it's not that we want the parents telling us all that we're going to do. It's that we want their ideas and their feedback to be able to move forward in the best ways. And part of that, idea and part of that empathetic understanding is parents need to understand from our approach of why is discipline important? Why is it important to think through your actions and have some accountability? Because I made a lot of phone calls where, the parent right away, well, what did somebody else do? Or why did my kid get in trouble? And it was, you were trying to get to this point to understand that, well, we're going to address the behavior so they can be accountable to make better choices next time. And those negative encounters are kind of what lead teachers to want to communicate less and less and less. So we have to try to establish an understanding that this is why we do this work, so that we can have some accountability. And if it's accountability for a staff member or for myself or whatever, that would have been what needed to happen as well. But there's a lot of great strategies in there. Again, the parentship success team is where I would start. As far as building relationships and connections, one thing I took this strategy from our school, and that was the emails from students. And I think especially now after COVID for a couple of years, and we're getting daily blasts of emails of COVID mitigation strategies, or we had a COVID case, you wanted to communicate, all this, that I think we kind of turned, it's almost been like email fatigue with our parents, and they're getting to the point to where they see an email come across from the school and they just delete it, or a phone call comes from the school. They see the three numbers of the area code and they don't want to answer it because they're used to negative messages. So the emails from students. So the students are writing emails to their parents about their day, about maybe something that they need. Like I got an email from my son a couple of weeks ago. He was disappointed about his test score that he just had gotten. So I think an email from my child is far different than just another email of one of the 400 that the school sends out over the course of the year. And that's also the positive phone call home. I think the positive phone calls home changes the narrative to, it's not just always bad news whenever the school calls. There can be good things happening, and it kind of changes the mindset that the school's not out to get you. The school's out to build positive relationships with you and your child. And I know they sound simple, but sometimes the simplest ideas are the best, because there's nothing better than making a positive phone call home. The challenge is just making sure you continue doing them all year and carving time out of your schedule to be able to do it. School leading with positive intentions. And I think it's really easy to build trust when you're leading with positive intentions, like an email, like a phone call, a home visit. If you're able to do a home visit, I know, again, schools do home visits, but I talk about in the book kind of some strategies behind that, some things to remember, some things to do to maybe make that a safer opportunity for parents. And I think it's important to remember that some of our parents didn't have a positive experience in school themselves. So when they don't have a positive experience in school, then they become a parent later on in life, they already kind of have a bias against schools because they didn't have a great experience either. So we may be starting off with somewhat of a wall built up that we've got to try to tear down. So again, anything we can do that sets the tone for positivity is really important. And a lot of the other strategies are just about getting parents involved. So I think, schools sometimes ask me, well, how do you build trust with your parents? Well, get them involved, get them in your schools, get them involved in lots of different ways. Another great strategy that I love is the career navigators idea. So it's probably more predominant in secondary schools, with helping kids understand kind of where they want to go with their careers. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go to a technical school? Do they want to be an entrepreneur? I mean, there's lots of opportunities for kids, but by bringing parents in who do those things, not only provides a great real world connection to parents who might, they might be a plumber, or, a pipe fitter, an electrician. There's a lot of great jobs out there that people aren't going to college for, that are paying them $50-$60 an hour starting out. So bringing those parents into our schools, parents who may have never been in a school before, or they come twice a year for conferences, and now we bring them into a school, they talk about their experiences. Now their child is, and their child's proud because their parents there helping other kids and talking in front of the class. And I think there's a lot of big positives there with doing that. And for elementary, this could be, tied into your PBL units. Are you doing you're doing a design unit? How do construction workers go through a design unit? How do, artists, how do graphic designers? I mean, every profession involves some sort of a design process of some sort. Bring those parents into your PBL units, have them talk to a class. It doesn't have to be a big production, a big career day. It can be the numerous opportunities throughout the year where you Zoom a parent in at 9 o'clock in the morning for a mini lesson. And there you go. With what we have seen in the last couple of years is it's so easy to connect technologically now. There really shouldn't be any excuse why we can't get people into the room somehow.
You mean parents?
Parents, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as a former principal, you heard from your teachers about their success stories and then obstacles. So can you give us examples of some of those instances that you heard that they interacted with parents?
I think that the teachers who were able to be honest, and they were afraid of the confrontation per se. I think the teachers who learned to build up to that by getting parents involved with other capacities, asking them to come in and do something else, asking them to come volunteer, the child sending emails on their own. I mean, that was something that all of our fifth grade did at that time. And I'd love to getting the emails from my own kids about because it's just from their perspective. It keeps us student centered. What does life look like from their perspective? I know as a parent and as the principal at Lewis and Clark, I love those Friday afternoon emails from Carson and Claire. So I know that was impactful to me. I know that was impactful to a lot of other parents. And it was simple. I mean, that was fifth grade, but I think about any grade could, maybe not kindergarten or first grade, but I think about any grade could do something like that to have students, communicating with their parents.
That's a great idea. I don't remember fifth grade, but I definitely wasn't sending out emails like a grown
Right.
up. So that's just getting them ready, like started at a good pace
Yeah.
to evolve. So
And they loved it too.
yeah, they feel more involved. I'm assuming to what they're doing in school. So they're not just it's not in a form it's diary, but new age
Mhm.
form of diary, but to someone who matters to them.
Absolutely.
So in connection to that, so what are some strategies from this book that you would have used during your time as a principal?
I liked, and we kind of did the career navigator. It wasn't established that clearly, but we would try to bring parents in a lot of different times and more and more and more as we kind of went through those different years. Because as parents love it, and we've got a lot of great resources in our parent community that we need to tie into, and a lot of occupations and jobs and different real world things that our parents do that become great resources to our kids, and PBL units and personalization, and trying to really drive personalization in our schools was a great way to be able to do that. Um, I have a strategy in the book called Heroes in the Home, and it's something I kind of picked up on later and actually kind of put together a few different pieces, but it's a great way to really celebrate diversity in our schools. Talk about racial equity, just really about anything to have our students establish. You kind of do the traditional establish a spot on the bulletin board on the wall, have a go through all your students throughout the course of the year. They may bring things to show and tell or whatever it may be, but the real difference in this one is that they're going to when it's their time to share with the class, they're going to bring a hero from their home to class. And another great way to bring our parents into our schools, but this could be a grandpa, maybe a grandpa that served in a war, a grandpa that did a march somewhere and protest of something that had happened to them or in the country at that particular time. um, Brothers, sisters, maybe a neighbor. It's somebody who can really celebrate, who's a hero, who has had some significant life experience, who's again a veteran, has something to share to the class that's meaningful, that can also tie into maybe something that you're studying in your curriculum as well. So you can go through the year how you want to, and it would take most of the year to do this, but that real world connection to a hero in the home helps to build learning for students. It helps them see from a different perspective from somebody else, but also gets that kid to just sit there and shine because they've brought in somebody who's a hero to them, and they're proud of that. The person who comes in is proud of that. It's a celebration of them, and it's going to be some great real world learning for the class. So heroes in the home is probably one of my favorite strategies that's in my book.
I like that one because it just highlights who they are. It could kind of give a highlight of why they are the way that they are, and it just
Absolutely.
kind of gives that support, like my family supports me and who I am. So
Yeah,
that's wonderful. Um,
absolutely.
so, lastly, what is your advice for new education leadership and then also new teachers to establish effective collaboration with parents?
I think be intentional about it from the very first day.
Mm.
I know we typically say, make a phone call home to every parent within, the first month of the school year. Well, if you're a secondary teacher, that's going to be hard to call, 150 or 180 parents. So, that's maybe it's an email home or a short biography of yourself. There's a lot of ways to be creative, but I think just being very intentional from the very beginning, having an open door policy, and I think it's as simple also as calling our parents. Something I talk more about in the book is there just seems to be a trend the last few years of we're sending a lot more emails when phone calls are needed. And an email sometimes you can't read the emotion. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong with an email, and it's just not as personal. I mean, if there's communication you need to get to everyone in your class, then send an email. If there's something that specific has happened to one or two children, it's probably more of an example of a phone call that needs to happen. That way, you're able to clearly communicate. You're able to answer any questions. You can kind of sense how it's going for the parent as they receive that information. And I think it's just as simple as be personal, make phone calls, make yourself available, get back to people if they have questions. It's just kind of that customer service idea for our parents as well. And I think just to sum that up, just from the very beginning, be very proactive. I think if you're the one, trying to positively build that relationship, it's going to go very, very well with your parent community.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And then also I was wondering, what is your ultimate goal for this book? For it to be in the hands of parents, for it to be in the hands of leadership, or specifically just teachers?
Great question. My goal for this book is for it to make a difference. And that's who I am. That's what I'm about. I want to help others. And I hope this book in some way helps school leaders connect better with their parent community, because that makes life better for parents. That makes life better for teachers. But most importantly, that makes a huge positive impact on our kids. And when our kids can see that mom and dad and my teacher at school are on the same page and they all care about me, that's what our kids need right now. We, as we've come out of this pandemic and people are worn out and they're stressed and they're, struggling, the more we can rely on each other, I think the better off we're going to be. But I just wanted to make a difference. I want the strategies to help because as I was doing research for the book, I would talk with a lot of people about strategies that they're doing. And a lot of people were like, I really don't know. We don't do enough. We don't do a lot. We don't do anything intentional. So I really wanted the book to be very, very much filled with tangible ideas that they could take with them and do in their school, and not be too intrusive that people are going to shy away from them either. But the book is probably more written for educators. I do think parents, and I've had some parents already who have ordered one, who have read it. I think it's helpful for them too. But I think anyone in education, whether you're a principal, a superintendent, a teacher, a paraprofessional, I think this helps. It was meant to help all educators.
Kyle, thank you so much for such an informative conversation, and then also to help us learn more about parentships and how they can be integrated into the PLC process and enhance collaboration.
Well, thank you very much. It was, like I said, it was an honor to be here today. And this is a topic I'm very passionate about. And I think we're going to have to really, really leverage these next few years to really help kind of everyone get back on track. So thank you very much for the invitation. It was an honor and a blast to talk about parentships in a PLC this afternoon.
This book is definitely another tool for your toolbox with teaching. It's an inspiring book as Kyle Palmer draws from his experience as both a former principal of a Model PLC at work school and then also as a parent who offer practical strategies for including parents or guardians as part of the collaborative culture focused on student learning. You can find this book on our website, solutiontree.com. Just look for Parentships in a PLC at Work by Kyle Palmer. Now, for a sponsor message here from the company. At Solution Tree, we share your vision to transform education to ensure learning for all. And we can help you make this vision a reality. No other professional learning company provides our unique blend of research-based, results-driven services that improve learning outcomes for students. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to navigate to our solutiontree.com/podcast page to listen to our other episodes. There you can subscribe to our podcast today. Just click on the button subscribe to your favorite podcast app. Also remember to like our episodes and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This has been your host, Prisma Lopez Marine. Thank you for joining me for this podcast, Charting New Paths in Pre-K to 12 Education.